Welcome back, and this is video 9 in the Helm YouTube mini course. This is really continuing on from previously, where I explained that getting your own copy of the source code for a chart is really valuable, because then you can really do what you want with it and you've got full control. But another step you can take is you can convert that chart into standard Kubernetes YAML. Therefore, you can apply that to any cluster without having Helm present. It's a kind of optional feature, I suppose. I found it very useful in my career, so you might find it useful as well. If you've just landed on this video, this is just part 9 of 15. There's a playlist below, and there's also links to my full courses on Kubernetes and Istio if you're interested. So in the previous video, I showed you that we can always download the full source code for a chart and store them locally, which gives us full control, means we can put it into source control. And then if we ever need to rebuild this cluster, and that's a very common thing to need to do, then all we would have to do is run through, if I've downloaded several of them, we would just need to run through them all and use Helm install to install each of them. One minor downside of that is it does mean on the new cluster that we've built, we would need to have Helm present. It's a minor downside. We would be scripting the creation of the cluster anyway, so we could always add the installation of Helm as a step in that process. But some projects prefer, instead of using Helm to install the chart, they just use Helm to generate the YAML that is needed to apply to the cluster. If you're confused, let me demonstrate. And I think once again, I'll do a Helm list, and we've got these two installations. Let's get rid of them. Let's start again. We'll do a Helm uninstall of monitoring and a Helm uninstall of MySQL. So we're back now to an empty cluster. Let's check there's no pods, and they're still there, but they are terminating, so that's okay. Now what we could have done, instead of using Helm install to install this local copy of the chart, is we could kind of go one step further. We could use instead the command called Helm template. Now the Helm template command needs arguments, and it is just the same arguments that our Helm install command required. So let's try it. Helm template, and we're going to call this installation monitoring. And the chart, well, remember, now we can use the name of the local folder containing this chart. So that's Kube Prometheus stack. I could use the remote charts here, but we're not doing that anymore. And then any flags, which for us was any overrides that we're applying. So now we're using -- values rather than -- set. And that's going to be that myvalues.yaml file, which I'm going to have to drill down to it, but that's in the Kube Prometheus stack folder /myvalues.yaml. Now, the only difference between this command and the Helm install command is this command generates the YAML that's needed for the cluster, but it doesn't apply it. It will just spit it onto the console. Let's demonstrate. If we've got that command correct, well, it went through pretty quickly actually, but there will have been thousands, I think, thousands of lines of YAML. It took quite a long time of scrolling. What I'm trying to show you here is that the output that we've got, but I want to draw your attention to the fact that, oh, we have kind deployment. That is just standard Kubernetes YAML. And so what we're seeing here is the exact YAML that is getting applied to the cluster when we do Helm install. So this Helm template command has kind of done everything except for that one last step. Now, what does that mean? Well, of course, it means we can catch this YAML. Instead of installing it, we can catch it. So I've just recalled that previous command. If you're able to, on the shell that you're using, I can usually redirect into our own YAML file. So what shall I call this? I don't know, I'll call this monitoring stack.yaml. Don't be surprised if you get some kind of a warning at that stage. It kind of depends on what state Helm's in and what state the charts are in. Sometimes you may see a warning. But if we open up that file in an editor, I certainly don't want to look at all of this. But going to the bottom of it, we actually have 43,000 lines of YAML, but it is just standard Kubernetes YAML. So now that you have this ability, you really have a choice, and it entirely depends on the preferences of your project. What you could do now is you could take this monitoring stack.yaml and make that be the single source of truth. You could say we're going to put that into our source control system, and from now on, that's the file that we're going to maintain. You could even throw away the original chart. There are pros and cons to this. The pro is that we don't need anything special now. In order to apply this to our cluster in future, let's say we're rebuilding the cluster on a different machine, kubectl apply -f back to normal standard Kubernetes monitoring stack.yaml, and bang, there it goes. We're just in standard Kubernetes territory here, and we can confirm now with kubectl get PO. We have, well, pretty much exactly the same results that we were getting as when we were doing Helm install. So that's an advantage. We don't need Helm anymore. Basically, in future, when we come to restore this cluster, we don't need Helm. The downside, of course, is that we've lost the source control for this chart. If in future we want to make any changes, let's say we want to change the port number, we want to change, well, anything really in this particular chart, we're going to have to work with this very ugly 50,000 lines of Kubernetes YAML, and it might not be easy to work with. But it's entirely up to you which approach you follow. You can either make the source code for the chart the single source of truth, you can make this generated YAML be the single source of truth, or you can go for both. Take the chart and the generated YAML and store them together in your source control system. Now, I realize there's a bit of duplication there, but it means you could directly apply the YAML if you don't have Helm available, but you've still got the original source code if you need to go back and regenerate that YAML. It's really entirely up to you, and people often kind of hung up on which is the best approach, and to be honest, it really doesn't matter. As long as you're doing this, as long as you're taking local copies of those remote charts, then you're in a good position. Now, one of the objectives of these Helm videos was to explain how I generated the YAML files for the monitoring section of this course. And that's exactly how I did it. The big video on this section, it's the thing we've been building up to, and that is, how can you make your own charts? And why would you want to do that? That's coming up soon. I'll see you later.